It's been almost a year since Kim Jong-un, the third son of Kim Jong-il, took power in North Korea after his father's death.
The other sons were perceived to be losers, and this was the one who had the potential to be a leader.
There are some who looked at this as perhaps an opportunity. Perhaps he would not be as ruthless and dictatorial.
He's made some statements that indicate that he's a little hipper than his father was. For example, he allowed his wife to be shown on TV. He appeared with life-size caricatures of Mickey Mouse.
He has also lifted restrictions on the dress code for women in North Korea, allowing them to dress in a more Western fashion.
But if I look at his actions in regard to his own people, there's very little difference between him and his father and his grandfather. One of the first things he did upon succeeding his father was to issue a shoot-to-kill order to North Korean border guards. He said, shoot anybody in the back who is trying to escape.
They risk everything. They know when they leave North Korea that they are risking death.
In 2001, Mike Kim left everything behind in Chicago and moved to northern China to help North Korean defectors.
I lived at the China-North Korea border, living in rural areas, hiding out with the North Koreans, sharing room with livestock at some periods.
He chronicled his experiences in the book Escaping North Korea.
For most Americans, the term Underground Railroad, it has a certain history for us. We think about the 1800s, we think about slavery and the fight to get north of the Mason-Dixon line. How would you describe what is considered the Underground Railroad from North Korea into China?
It's 6,000 miles running from North Korea through China, through Southeast Asia.
Is a network of safe houses and secret routes.
There are contacts along this entire route to help and to aid North Koreans?
There are some within your network, some within another network that is willing to help, and you know people in those cities that are willing to risk housing the North Koreans.
Mike founded Crossing Borders, a Christian organization devoted to helping North Korean refugees. This man, whom we will call Tom, is currently the organization's director.
Why are you in disguise?
I help North Korean people in China. It's illegal for anyone to even feed a North Korean refugee.
And if your identity was revealed?
I could go to jail, and more importantly, the people that are working for us in China could go to jail, and the North Koreans could be executed. We work through the underground church in China. We consider ourselves the first link of the Underground Railroad.
When I would first meet a North Korean and they would come into our shelter, they would be scared out of their minds. They'd sit as far away from me on the other end of the room as possible.
In 2008, Crossing Borders helped this man, a 46-year-old North Korean defector who fled his country. We've agreed not to reveal his name.
I had to flee because I helped some South Koreans that had been kidnapped by the North Korean government, and that is a political crime there.
Just getting out of North Korea, though, has its first hurdle. Right? How do they do that?
There's two ways. One is you can pay or bribe a border guard on the North Korea and or the China side. The other way is during the winter, the river freezes over, so people will walk across the ice.
I went over in broad daylight, my daughter, another person, and myself. We went to the river and pretended to wash our faces and escaped over the narrowest part.
Producer Minnie Rowe interviewed the defector in his small apartment in Seoul, South Korea.
How scared were you when you were crossing that border?
I knew that in order to live, I had to cross the river and get to the other side. As soon as I got over, the first thought that popped into my head was, oh yes, I am alive.
Once you cross from North Korea into China, it's not like the doors have been flung open for these people. I mean, there are dangers in China, too.
China has a zero-tolerance policy towards North Koreans in China.
It's not only the police, but China has seasons where they announce to their citizens along the borders to report North Korean people to them so that they can earn money.
If you are sent back from China into North Korea, what could happen to you?
You've committed treason by leaving the country, and the punishment is death.
The defector's wife and second daughter crossed the border into China almost a year later.
We met an elderly woman, and she called a local Christian church.
What happens to family members in North Korea if it is discovered that one of their family members has managed to escape successfully?
Their families would suffer.
They'll face the most brutal torture, I mean, really right out of World War II concentration camp type of things.
After we fled, my brothers and sisters and all our in-laws were brought to the intelligence office and interrogated. In fact, my youngest brother-in-law was beaten so severely that he's practically in a wheelchair at this point.
With the help of Crossing Borders, the defector and his family remained hidden in northern China, preparing to escape from that country. In August 2009, they boarded a train heading south with strict instructions.
They told us we cannot take anything, especially not a cell phone, because if you get captured, they will be able to trace all the numbers and track down the people who helped you.
The family spent a week on the train heading toward Laos, but to get out of China, they had to cross the border on foot.
The China-Laos border is very mountainous. It's a tough hike.
When we arrived at the South Korean embassy in Laos, they gave us temporary passports to get us to Seoul.
From Laos, the whole family flew to South Korea. The defector's new life, after a year and a half on the road to freedom, had begun.
When you arrived at Incheon International Airport and you stepped on Korean soil for the first time, what was going through your mind?
The minute I arrived, I literally gave a shout of joy. Now I can finally breathe.
It makes it all worth it to see the ones that have attained that dream of freedom.
Coming up, technology is starting to crack open the Hermit Kingdom. Seoul, South Korea, the booming metropolis, is only 36 miles from its border with North Korea, but it's an entire world apart. 2 years after he fled the communist regime in the north, our defector and his family became citizens of South Korea in May 2010.
What was going through your mind when you held your Korean citizenship for the first time?
It was very emotional. It was a strange feeling to become a citizen of a country that I once hated.
He and his family are adjusting to life and freedom, but sadly, the same month they arrived in Seoul, his 7-year-old daughter died of an unknown infection.
As a parent, I always think about all the things I couldn't give her, and that weighs heavily on my mind the most.
Sad ending to a long, long journey.
There's so many mixed emotions for refugees who come out of North Korea to China to South Korea.
3 generations of the Kim family have maintained an iron grip on the isolated society in the north, but it has not been completely impenetrable.
Balloons have been going across the DMZ ever since the end of the Korean War, really, and originally the balloons would drop leaflets telling people about what life was like in South Korea.
One of the women I interviewed who was a North Korean, her job was to pick up anti-North Korean propaganda leaflets that were flown on balloons into North Korea. And I asked her, why did you use a stick to pick these anti-North Korea propaganda leaflets up? And she said, because the regime taught me if I touched anything from South Korea with my hands, that they would rot and fall off.
Today, the balloons have gone high-tech. They're often GPS guided and can drop the information that they contain on a more targeted area.
And new technology is starting to crack open the Hermit Kingdom.
Because of the advent of cell phones and the internet and other things that are starting to give them windows into the outside world that they never had before. If Kim Jong-un takes them down a path towards even the slightest degree of liberalization, it may very well be that that leads towards much more radical change than he or the political elites in North Korea are willing to accept. The North Korean power elite and the military have too much invested in the repression of this society.
It appears Kim Jong-un has purged some of his father's generals. This man, Vice Marshal Ri Yong-ho, was often seen alongside the new leader and then mysteriously fired from all his duties in July of 2012. Other powerful figures remain. John Tiong-ho, seen here at Kim Jong-il's funeral, is the General Secretary of the Korean Workers' Party. He is the man who oversaw the development of North Korea's nuclear bomb.
There has been very little indication that he's willing to open the country up. He certainly hasn't stopped the country's nuclear or missile program, and the crackdown on the people internally still continues.
As long as it does, organizations like Crossing Borders will be there to help.
What does your faith mean to what you're doing in China?
It has everything to do with what we do. We believe that God has created everyone equal, and that God created me just the same as God created a North Korean refugee.
We've been able to change lives, and I do it all over again. It was very rewarding.
And many Koreans look forward to a future where their country is unified.
Absolutely. The vast majority of North Koreans wish for that day.